Alright guys, welcome back. This is the third part, I believe, of Joseph's part in Refugee. It starts on page 34 and I'm going to go to 39. The Hitler youth led Joseph down the narrow corridor of the German passenger car. Tears sprang into Joseph's eyes. The brown shirt who'd taken his father away to Kristallnacht had said, "We'll come for you soon enough." But Joseph hadn't waited. He'd gone to them with this stupid stunt. They came to a compartment with a man in the uniform of the Gestapo, or the Nazi police. And Joseph stumbled. The Gestapo looked up at them and through the window in his door. "No, not here, not now, not like this," Joseph prayed. The Hitler youth pushed Joseph on past. They came to the door of the Jewish train, and the Hitler youth swung Joseph around. He glanced over his shoulder to make sure nobody was listening. "What were you thinking?" the boy whispered. Joseph couldn't speak. The boy thrust the armband at Joseph's chest. "Put that on, and don't you ever do that again." The Hitler youth told Joseph. "Do you understand?" Yes," Joseph remembered. Thank you. The Hitler youth breathed hard, his face red like he was in trouble. He spotted the piece of candy and Joseph had bought for Ruth, and he took it. He stood taller, tugged at the bottom of his shirt and straightened it, then turned and marched away. So in all honesty, this boy was being very nice to Joseph. He could have turned him in. He could have beat him up. He could have stolen something bigger than just a piece of candy from him. This boy was actually being very, very nice to Joseph. He got kind of lucky. Joseph slipped back into the compartment, still shaking, and collapsed into a bench. He stayed there the rest of the trip, his armband securely in place, as visible as possible. He didn't even leave to go to the bathroom. Hours later, the train pulled into Hamburg Central Railroad Station. Joseph's mother led him and his sister through the crowds to Hamburg docks, where their ship waited for them. Joseph had never seen things so big. If you stood the ship on one end, it'd be taller than any building in Berlin. Two giant tan smokestacks stuck up from the middle of the ship, one of them belching gray-black diesel engine smoke. A steel ramp ran to the top of the tall black hole, and hundreds of people were already aboard, milling around under the colorful, fluttering pendants, and waving to friends and family down on the docks. Flying highest above them all, as if to remind everyone who was in charge, was the green and white Nazi flag, with the black swastika right in the center. The ship was called the MS St. Louis. St. Louis was the name of the city in America, Joseph had learned. That seemed like a good omen to him, a sign that they would eventually get to America. Maybe one day he'd visit the real St. Louis. A shabby-looking man stumbled out from behind the crates and lugged a pile up on the dock. Ruthie screamed, "Ah!" Joseph jumped, and his mother looked frightened and stepped back. The man reached for them. "You made it at last!" The voice, thought Joseph. Could it really be? The man threw his arms around Mama. She let him hug her, even though she still held her hand across her chest to ward him off. He stepped back and held her at arm's length. "My dearest Rachel," he said, "I thought I'd never see you again." It was him. The shabby man who lurched at us from the shadows, like an escapee from a mental asylum, was Joseph's father, Aaron Ladeau. So finally he's in contact with his father. Might be done in a scary way, but they do have finally contact with him. Joseph shuddered. His papa looked nothing like the man who'd been dragged away from their home 6 months ago. His thick brown hair and beard had been shaven off his head and were covered with scraggy stubble that was thinner, too. He was thinner, too thin, a skeleton, threadbare suit, a size too big for him. So what he's realizing, all of his dad's hair has been shaved, his beard and hair on his head. That means he had been in a concentration camp and they had even detained. Aaron Ledoux's eyes bulged from his gaunt face as he turned and looked to his children. Joseph caught his breath in his throat. Ruthie cried out and buried her face in Joseph's stomach. She did this as their papa turned to them into a hug. He smelled so ripe, like the alley behind a butcher shop, that Joseph just had to turn his head away. So again, Dad's hair is shaved, Dad is very skinny, very malnourished, and he smelled really, really bad. Joseph, Ruth, my darlings. He kissed the tops of their heads again and again, and then jumped back. He looked around menacingly, like there were spies everywhere. We have to go. We can't stand here. We have to get on board, or they'll stop us. Let's go. But I have tickets, Mom said, and visas. Papa shook his head quickly. It doesn't matter, he said. His eyes looked like they were about ready to pop out of their sockets. They'll stop us. They'll take me back. Ruthie clung to her brother. Papa was scaring her. He scared Joseph, too. Hurry, Papa said. He pulled the family with him into the stacks of crates, and Joseph tried to keep up with him as he darted from place to place, dodging imaginary enemies. Joseph gave his mother a frightening glance that said, What's wrong with Papa? Mama shook her head, her eyes full of worry. But when they got close to the ramp, Papa hunkered down behind the last crates. On the count of 3, we make a break for it, he told his family. Don't stop. Don't stop for anything. We have to get on that ship. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Joseph wasn't ready. None of them were. They watched as Aaron Ledoux ran up the ramp where other passengers had already squared on their hands their tickets to the smiling man in uniform. Joseph's father threw himself past the sailors and stumbled into the ramps of railing before righting himself and spinning up around to the gangway. Wait, a sailor cried. Quickly now, Mama said. Together they all hurried up the ramp as best they could, carrying all their tickets. I have tickets, she told the sailor. I'm sorry. We can wait our turn. The startled man from the front of the line motioned for them to go ahead, and Joseph's mother thanked him. My husband just eager to leave, she told the sailor. He smiled sadly and punched their tickets. I understand. Oh, let me get someone to help you with those bags, porter. Joseph stood in wonder as another sailor, a German man without a Star of David armband around, who wasn't a Jew, put a suitcase under each arm, one of them in his hand, and led them up the gateway. He treated them like they were real passengers, like real people. And he wasn't the only one. Every sailor they met dotted his cap at them, and the steward who showed them to the cabin assured them they could call him for anything they needed. While on board, anything at all. The room was spotless. The bed linens were freshly laundered, and the hand towels were pressed and neatly stacked. It's a trick, Papa said. Then the door closed. He glanced around the little cabin like the walls were closing in on him. They'll come for us soon enough. It was just what the brown shirt had told Joseph. Mama put her hands on Joseph and Ruthie's head. Why don't you two go on to the promenade, she said softly. I'll stay here with your father. Joseph and Ruthie were only too glad to get away from Papa. A few hours later, they watched from the promenade as tugboats pushed the MS St. Louis away from the dock, and passengers threw confetti and celebrated and blew kisses goodbye. Joseph and his family were on their way to a new country and a new life. But all Joseph could think about was the terrible thing that must have happened to his father to make him look so awful and act so scared. All right, so that's the end of that. We know that there must be something going on with the way Joseph's father acted. Or were these people just being nice, like, yes, let's get these people out of jury before something goes wrong? We will see.